Welcome to A Simple Life. It is muddy. It is the middle of winter. We just passed winter solstice and the days have finally started to kind of get a little longer. It's funny, you can just kind of feel it. You're like, ooh, last week it was dark right now. Okay, and it means a lot to me because I work a 9 to 5 and I've just talked about that. And we've been coming up here and we've been redoing all the goat fencing and expanding the area, and I talked about how we were doing that. I'm going to show you kind of how we've been doing it. The boys have been insanely helpful. Without them, there's no me getting any of this done in the timely manner that I've got it done. So what we've done is we've come through, and these are the 1 1/4 almost inch fiberglass rods that we're using. And I've taken a piece of soft wire and I just run it through, and this wire is held in between. This has got a little bit of movement to it, so these won't pinch. And all I do is I just run it through, I bend it, I wrap it around 3 or 4 times, I bend them both over, and this is like a cotter pin to me, and they're just cheaper. All this wire is hot. The bottom, we do not have anything on the bottom yet. The bottom wire will actually be barbed wire, and it'll be stretched all the way along the bottom, and there's one more hole about 2 inches off the ground right here, and that will hold the barbed wire. The reason for barbed wire is coyotes and livestock guardian dogs wanting to dig out, and so I don't want either of those things happening. And now I don't expect my livestock guardian dogs to want to dig out. There's gonna be 2 reasons for that. These are gonna be hot. That's the first reason. The second reason is I'm going to be attaching my invisible fence to this, and so their collars will actually be triggered at about 6 feet away from this. Don't think they're gonna be that determined to get out because my dogs just don't really care that much to get out. All right, so let me show you what we have going on here. This is the run that goes down into the woods. This run starts here and goes all the way down. I mean, you can see it's like a little window in the woods, straight down through the woods. I'm not gonna take you down the whole entire thing, but I will show you kind of how we hook this up. So this corner isn't finished. The boys are getting me supplies right now to finish this corner off. But the way I actually anchored these is I have my fiberglass rod, and this is my end post, okay? All the strain is on this post. And right here is a high tensile 9-gauge wire. And it goes all the way back here to this anchor, and this is a vineyard anchor right here. They use them in vineyards. I happened to get a bunch at an auction a while back, I think for a couple dollars a piece. And so this is about 2.5 feet in the ground. It kind of drills into the ground. You twist them into the ground. I just use a pipe and just twist them in the ground with a little bit of pressure, and they go right in. It takes about, I don't know, 5 minutes for each one. If you're going to put in hundreds of these, people use like an auger, a small auger, like a hand auger, and you just kind of drill them in the ground. It's probably a lot easier, but for me, I'm not doing that many of them, so we just did it like this. Another thing that we did is this wire, and I changed this wire is grounded, and so if my fence is touching it, like right here, it's grounding this out. All the other ones, except for this one, I think one other, I'm using a glass or a porcelain insulator. And actually I have one over here, I'll show you. And I'm using those to isolate the wire that's going from the post down into the ground. And the reason for doing that is I want to make sure that, well, I'm not grounding out my wires. We have our rod, we have our wire on either side. And I know I haven't cleaned all this up, we just got this up. This is touching this, but that's okay because as we come down here, we have our porcelain insulator, and it's wrapped around, and as you can see, this is going to go back to this rod, and this is under tension. So over the span of about 300 yards, this isn't a crazy amount of tension. It's just enough tension. If you're an animal and you want to push into it, you're going to have really good contact. If you're trying to go through this, there's no way that it's just going to move out of your way. You're going to be pushing on it. That's all I need. I just need it so that way when the animal tries to push into it to get through it, they get shocked. That's it. It doesn't have to be anything fancier than that. So this is what we've been up to. We've been working our tails off. The boys have been amazing. These type of projects can be really, really hard to do solo, especially like this hill. It doesn't look like much, but by the time you get to the bottom of that hill, you're about 100 feet lower than I am right here. Going up and down this can be really old, really fast, because every wire has to be stretched down, have to be put the pins in. If there's any little hiccup with the little spool, it gets caught, anything like that, you're coming back up, you're undoing that, you're fixing it, and you're going back down. So the boys were really helpful because Clint would stay up here and Clay and I would go down. Clay would pull the wire and I would start putting the pins in. And we just went back and forth like that. And so this actually worked way quicker. This was probably the hardest stretch right here, just because it was just, it's a hard hill to climb up and down. And you know, you're trying to do it with equipment, with stuff on you. And it's wet and muddy and raining. Speaking of which, here come the boys now. They brought me some more fiberglass rods. Let's drop off 2 here, and then you can go down and pick up the fence post pounder and drop off these and the anchors, okay? Can you do that for me?
I thought we were replacing this and putting the post here.
No, the rest of those are gonna go down at the bottom, so we can finish off that and anything that down there. It's probably more than enough, but I'd rather have more than enough than you guys have to go and do another run, okay? Take your time going down because that's hilly and you don't wanna bounce them off.
Yeah, because it's also really bumpy.
Yep, it is bumpy. All right. Thank you, boys. All right, so as you can see, yeah, they have been a huge help. Just running back and forth and helping us get stuff. They're the ones that helped me take all these posts down there. I took a chunk of them and they kept feeding me, and I would drive them in the ground and they kept bringing more posts up and down. So we've probably gone up this hill, up and down this hill, I don't know, 30, 40 times. So yeah, I can't complain a bit. To give you an idea, this post is only under a small amount of tension. It's basically the tension from there to here and here to over there. So I don't need a lot to hold this post straight and to be able to tighten this. And this is also being tightened by hand. So we're just gonna pound these in at a 45-degree angle and then anchor them to this, just like I did in the other area. And then we'll tighten this fencing up and then we'll be done here. And then I'll take you down and I'll show you the other area because it's been a lot of work. We're not even close to getting done. It's actually open for about probably 100 yards or so, but it's so far away from where the goats are used to eating that they're not gonna go down right away. All right, so this is what this ended up looking like. As you can see, it looks a lot tighter. This doesn't look like it's bent over like it was. And it'll hold perfectly fine for the 24 feet or so of wire that's pulled pretty tight. It's tight enough. It's not perfectly tight, but I mean, it's tight enough and it's thick enough gauge that the goats aren't gonna wanna push through it, either are the dogs. And nothing's grounded out, and so we are good on this side. One of the reasons we picked this area to put our goats in is because all the brush. Now I came in here and reached in and pulled a lot of the brush out and took it down. It's right down over there, and we were going to burn it at some point. But I need to make it so that way the goats could actually start penetrating into this area. Now, if you look, this area was similar to this area over here. Now, this falls off really steep, and when I say it falls off really steep, yeah, it falls off. It's steeper than 45 degrees. Now, a lot of this area was very much like this over here, very brushy, a lot of just bramble, you know, brush, junk. This was the one area on the property that really didn't take well to the Doug fir. Now it's on the southeast side, so it's getting that morning sun, all the midday sun, you're really getting baked and dried out. So you generally have less trees take on that side, and if you don't overplant on that southeast side, then yeah, it's gonna come out a little bit more sparse. That's part of the issue. Part of the other issue is, I think they put a few different types of trees in here. Herman told me specifically only put Doug fir in. They're the only ones that actually made it in here. And I've seen a few, what I think are spruce, and I think I saw a few cedars in here. So they may have put a mix in here. It looks like everything that has made it has been Doug fir. So that's why we picked to put goats in here. Now, once this area is done being cleaned up by the goats, I will probably always have a few goats on the property specifically to help deal with brush and be able to fence them in tight areas. When I say a few, 7, 6, 7, something like that, just enough to breed, have decent genetics, and then be able to keep the brush down as we need to, because it's 80 acres up here. That's a bit of land. All right, after they're done cleaning this up, we will end up probably running sheep or cows in here. And let me show you why, because we have some really beautiful like little meadows right in this area. It's hard to tell, but they're right back over here. They're gonna be beautiful once they're cleaned up. So as you can see, I brought the excavator down here. I actually brought both of them, the big one and the small one. He came in, and I didn't knock over anything in here. I didn't clear any trees. All I did was, well, I took out a few maples, but all I took out was brush and junk, and a lot of it. And this area goes all the way down here. There's a little like window right back over here. It goes down and goes all the way to where the boys are at the far edge of the property. So as you can see that little strip of vines going up? That's blackberry, and that just climbs straight up the trees. It'll choke out smaller trees. It's a huge, like I've said over and over again, fire hazard, because it's basically like having cardboard in your trees. And if you ever have a fire, it can be devastating when that stuff starts going off. So we came in here and I cleaned this all up, pulled all the blackberry out, as much of it as I could, pulled as much of the hazelnut brush out, and this is what we're left with. Now it's about an acre right here going up the hillside of what will be really good, nice pasture. Not horse pasture, but cow pasture for sure. Cows will be fine in here, especially during the summer. I wouldn't do them in the winter. It'll get too muddy, they'll wreck it. But I'm thinking once the goats have really cleaned this up, put a couple cows in here. 1, 2 cows every summer, and it's 1 or 2 cows that I don't need to have on my main pasture. And since the fence is electrified, that makes it easy. We don't have to worry about how to contain them. And so that's kind of one of the ideas that I've had, is as we get these areas cleaned up, transitioning those areas into being more useful and not just areas that the goats are cleaning up. All right, so I've already come about 20 feet down this hillside. And once again, this is really steep. And I actually brought my excavator, the little mini X. I brought it all the way down here and brought it down into this hole, just enough to clear out some of the brush and stuff and make it easier. I really wanted to make a real solid path through here, so that way the fence wouldn't be overrun by the blackberry and hazelnut right away. And I'd have time for the goats to come in and start kind of clearing around stuff. So this is actually a little jog that we have going on here. The fence is gonna come up. It's gonna jog over about 40 feet to that corner and then jog over. So it's just a little Z. The reason why is it just with the terrain and how steep everything is, you can see how steep it is. I mean, yeah. I wanted to dodge some of the worst of that, as well as it was gonna be a real nightmare to try to get fencing through. So with everything we've already gone through to get fencing in here, figured we'd make this section easy on ourselves. All right. Right there, that's the corner, and then the fence comes along here. And I'll show you. Here it is right here. And when we were at the top of the hill, you could kind of see there was like a doorway kind of through the woods. And this is at the very bottom of that. Now you can't see the top of the hill, but this line goes all the way up that hill and is just super steep. And this is pretty far back, pretty remote on our property. It's actually so remote. The other day when I was in here, we've been tracking a big cougar, like a big cat, tomcat, and keeping an eye on him, trying to figure out if he's going to start going after animals. We had some real issues. I mentioned this with cougars in our area. And this is a different cat than any of the cats that have been killing livestock. but he's huge. I'll include a photo. And up here the other day was a fresh paw print, and I'm pretty sure it was him. I'll include a photo of that paw print, and it was right up here. As I was working, I saw it. There was actually a bunch of them. So this is the area that he came through. He came right up here, and this is that clay, the orange clay that's in that photo. It's right here. He planted his foot right here, and I walked over it because there's not much to get up here. Matter of fact, it's kind of hard to tell, but right here, there's a print. There's a pad right there, and then the 4 paw pads. Anyways, as you can see, this is super steep, and we actually have a spring that's up there that comes through right underneath here and goes underground a few times. It's actually right underneath us, about 4 feet underneath of us. There's a hole right here, and you can kind of see down there. What has happened is over time, these big leaf maples, like this one right here, have fallen down a lot, and they've created like a second layer of soil that has slowly built up, and it collapses every once in a while. And so what we have is a stream that goes right through here. And we did our best to kind of bridge that right here. And what I'll probably do is come in with a second post in the future, or maybe 2 posts, and put them on either side and put some just multiple tiers of wire, just kind of fill in that. When this collapses, we'll keep an eye on this. But I found that once my animals know the perimeter, they generally don't try to push it if they know where they're allowed, kind of. And that's if they're fed. And that comes down to why we're going to have 2 pastures. There will be a south pasture and a north pasture. And I'll show you, I showed you a couple weeks ago what that looked like. And that's why, so that way as we go through summer and spring, I can swap the animals back and forth between them and make sure they have good feed on a regular basis. Okay, we are done down here. We got all the wires stretched and set up. The boys and I, well, we learned a few lessons about doing fencing, and the boys and I got it done. What we learned is when we do long runs that have bends and kinks, or they're going up and down hills, it's good to set the tensioners. We use these little gripples. They're a little pricey, but you have to use something. And I already had the setup for these because of vineyards and doing the gardens and stuff like that. So these are the little gripples. I think I've probably showed you these before. And so we figured out that if we put them in the middle, it actually really helps, because when you're tensioning, you're not tensioning just pulling everything to one side. And so there's less friction in the middle. The friction is more spread out in the middle than trying to do it at one end or the other end. How do I know that? Well, I tried to tension that whole entire run coming from the top of that hill all the way down to this corner. And I realized very quickly that I was putting a lot more strain on this corner post than the top one because of all the friction going up. And so from now on, I will always tension in the middle. I haven't done a lot of fencing, especially high tensile fencing. So because of that, I didn't think about it. I didn't know. So anyways, we got this all set up. This is ready. It's ready to be hot. We aren't going to have any issues. Now, is the fencing complete? No. And I'll explain why the fencing isn't complete. So right down at the bottom of this hill is another set of fencing. And that fencing is not very good. It's a shared fence between us and the vineyard next to us. Now, my goats have never managed to get into that vineyard. Well, they did, but it was another hole, and we fixed that a long time ago. And so we are going to be running fencing up this way as well. So technically, my goats could get out down there in about a 4-foot section that's open, but my goats are not that hungry. There's plenty of stuff for them to eat on going up the hill and all over the place. So I'm not going to worry about that today. We are going to get that all fixed in the next week or so. The reason is I want it done. I don't want to think about this. We're about to have about 10,000 trees, 9,000 trees or so planted, little Doug firs planted in the clear cut. And I don't want to have to worry about them getting in there and just hammering my fresh trees. I'm paying to have them planted. I do not want to waste my money, especially since it's not cheap to have almost 10,000 trees planted. All right, so that being said, that's where we are today. I want to thank you guys so much for joining us. This is actually Christmas Eve. I want to thank the boys for coming out. And so far today, it rained, it got sunny, it rained, it got sunny, it rained, and now it's sunny again, or at least the skies are blue. And the boys have stuck with me through most of that. And I want to thank them for that because Christmas Eve working, huh, boys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very fun.
You know what? When you have time and you got a nice day, you get stuff done. And those two hang in there pretty darn good with me. So, all right. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. And I will get back into gardening very soon. I'm just having to deal with some fencing stuff because I realized my fencing was not adequate. And I was going to plant beautiful gardens and then watch deer and goats and critters destroy them. So this is the beginning of our fencing. We have another section we're going to put pig pastures in. We have deer fencing we're going to be putting in. And we have to rehang our vineyards. Isn't that right, boys?
Yeah.
And we have everything to do all of that, except for time and sunshine. So we need time and sunshine. All right, have a good one.